Hi, everyone. It's Jennifer DePasquale, president and co-founder of the Women in Retail Leadership Circle. Did you know that we host regional one-day events? We provide space for women executives to gather and network, learn from each other, and improve business processes. If you want to find inspiration on how to conquer challenges in both your personal and professional lives, consider joining us at our Women in Retail Leadership Circle on the Road event coming up in New York on October 24th. For more information, visit ontheroad.wirlc.com. We hope to see you there.
Hello and welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Ashley Tradio, Senior Content Strategist at the Women in Retail Leadership Circle, and today I'm joined by Rachel Riedinger, owner and designer at Neva, Opet, where she creates long-lasting quality leather bags and accessories. Today we're going to be talking about how Rachel started her business, what slow fashion means, and some tips for brands who want to become more sustainable. So Rachel, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about all my my knowledge and accidental entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I gave a brief introduction about you, but could you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you started Neva Opet and how you became an accidental entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, my educational background, I had a degree in art history, and I had always been sewing most of my life, and it was just really like a great creative outlet for me when I was younger. I like manipulating things with my hands, just seeing 2D objects come into 3D objects. So basically, it's always a passion of mine. And sort of out of college, it was just really hard to really find a job that was, it was just not kind of, I don't want to say soul crushing, but but just that, just where I felt fulfilled and I was just kind of utilizing certain skills, or that I was at least making a difference in someone's day-to-day life. So after a few jobs out of college, I decided to kind of like pick my hobby back up of sewing, because I would dabble every now and again and sew curtains, repair clothing items that I had, holes, whatever. So it became like a weekend thing. On weekends, I would go home and sew little things, and then I kind of got into this headspace where I wanted to kind of make a leather bag, and I think it just kind of came out of not being able to find one at the time. It was, I guess it was around 2012, and everything kind of had like a lot of hardware or logos, and I just wanted something really simple, and I just couldn't find it. So I said, well, I've got a home sewing machine, and I found some like really thin lambskin at a local fabric store, and just kind of started making little things, not thinking that it would lead to anything else, just because really I just thought it was just a great way for me to have a weekend hobby outside of work. And I started making more and more things, started making things for friends and coworkers, and it got to a point where some people noticed and they're like, you should make some side money, do markets. And then it kind of snowballed. I got interest in from local shops, and I got emails from people that were interested in carrying my line wholesale, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. And I always joke, because that's why I say my hobby really turned into a business when I didn't know that I really had the possibility to actually make that happen. Kind of growing up, just everyone was like, I thought, you have to have a corporate job, you have to have security, all that.
Sure.
So it didn't even really cross my mind at the time. But then I really kind of say I'm an accidental entrepreneur, because just out of the blue, I received a purchase order from Urban Outfitters, and I didn't have a business license. I wasn't an LLC, anything. I mean, I maybe had like a Etsy shop that had a few items on it, but it was, just kind of like trying to make some side money. And then I thought, oh, well, I guess there's really some interest in these things that I'm doing. So that's kind of how I joke and say, my hobby turned into a business. And then once I kind of it just really snowballed after that, and kind
Yeah.
of growing more and more wholesale accounts.
Well, that's just so interesting. I have so many questions for you.
Yes,
Um,
of course, I can elaborate too.
but so, well, one, what were some challenges, when you were starting out, since, this did go from a
Mhm.
hobby into, a real business? What were some challenges when you were starting out and how did you overcome them? But then also, I'd love to get into, what kind of differences between working with like a bigger corporation versus the independent owned
Mhm.
businesses and why you'd prefer working with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say really a lot of my initial challenges, because I really only grew this business based on sales. I didn't have any loans. I maybe put a couple thousand on a credit card and then kind of grew it, bought more supplies, bought more machinery as sales came in. So, really, not working with traditional investors that way. And really not thinking that maybe I had a business that could last more than maybe just a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So really kind of growing it organically, um, definitely a challenge, but at the end of the day, absolutely so worth it to me too, especially as a woman. And I see, living in Atlanta, in such a creative town, so many other women, jewelry artists, jewelry designers doing the same thing. And so I kind of felt that, okay, we can all do this. We can grow a strong business that can support us personally as well as professionally, and really carve out a niche for ourselves. But yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest ones, just like getting funding, having a place to call a studio as we grew, because working with leather, our machines had to grow, our cutting tables had to grow, and also finding that space that was not just that didn't cost an arm and a leg, especially in Atlanta, where we're building so much here, and places that for independently owned companies are really hard to find. And we did find a studio, and I'm so thankful every day that we're able to find it and be in a building with several other women entrepreneurs. Actually, it's all occupied by women entrepreneurs.
Oh,
So
wow, that's
it's,
amazing.
yeah. So yeah, so it's really great. But and also, overcoming those, it makes me laugh because I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever feel like I overcome every obstacle, just because there's something new to work on and do every single day, whether it's marketing, website, photography, making our styles, uh, perfecting them, perfecting the leather, the sewing. So really, it's almost like it's like this little baby that kind of grows and needs attention every day. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, just really being present, and because it was my hobby, and I love what I do. That I think that, starting out as a hobby and doing something that I loved really helped push me forward, instead of that idea of I just want to work for myself and then finding something you love, if that makes
exactly.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And there was another part to that question I think that you asked me, and
Yeah, I also asked, kind of the difference between working with the independent
right.
owned boutiques versus working with bigger corporations. And you kind of said earlier that you
Uh-huh.
preferred working with the independent owned boutiques. So I was just curious about your experiences with both and why you'd prefer the boutiques.
But yeah, but working, having been approached by a bigger store, and not knowing, what it was like to work for smaller boutiques, it kind of, the communication, like I said, wasn't really there a lot. And then kind of getting a sales rep and being able to have that luxury of talking to the owner directly, talking about delivery dates and what other designers or products they carry, they're so thoughtful in their buying processes that they know where everything comes from. They know who makes it. They know who they're supporting, and it was really kind of coming to learn all that. It was really kind of an eye-opening experience where I was like, we've really kind of are slowly changing retail, the traditional way that it's been run by outsourcing products, kind of just selling them cheaply. And with so many people now um, becoming not only just making things on the side just for hobbies, but the thoughtful consumption of it from store owners, which is now even trickling down to consumers, has really made me not only appreciate those independent boutiques, but allows me to also kind of, work with them directly and say, hey, we've got these new styles in mind. Do you think your customers would like them? Kind of just having just that open dialogue and really treating our business the way that we want it to evolve, that we're the people behind it. So come to us, let's chat. We're the humans, and this is a little bit about us and our personality. So it's been really kind of great and pushed me out of my comfort zone too, because I'm definitely an introvert.
That's great. So
Yeah.
let's talk about slow fashion now. So maybe you could kind of explain what slow fashion is and why it's important to you and the brand.
Yeah. So really, slow fashion has. I feel like it really kind of kick-started or became kind of uh, more of a phenomenon. Really, I don't know if I really want to say that, but more universal, universally talked about. Maybe around when I started my business. So just being aware of. Basically, it's about being aware of where your products are made, who makes them, how what their processes are like. Basically, as opposed to a lot of the companies that we've kind of grown up dealing with, like larger, again, I won't name any, but larger stores that really produce so many collections in a year, and the cost of doing that is really on the people that make them in the factories. And I always said to people kind of who asked me initially, what really is slow fashion and how do I learn more about it? I always told them to watch that documentary, The True Cost, because it'll really kind of highlight those things that we don't see every day as consumers in terms of who is actually making our products and what kind of work conditions that they're in the factories. And with the with recent tragedies in Bangladesh and people dying, that I think it really kind of became people became fully aware of the kind of conditions in which a lot of their products that are pretty cheap
Yeah.
where they come from. And because I feel like before, or maybe around before 2014, it wasn't really a thing that we talked about or really thought about, because it was that idea of like out of sight, out of mind. And when these tragedies came into light in the news, most people were like, oh, I guess I kind of thought about where that they were made overseas, but never really thought about the impact that it caused, or even the environmental effects of fast fashion and pollution. And I will just to touch on this again, when I started it, it was more about, oh, these are handmade, I sew these, it comes from me, and then sort of evolved into that, into a business that is really passionate about slow fashion and telling people they should be more thoughtful, or not should, I hate to use the word should, but but being mindful of where their products come from. And I never mind telling people, and I obviously don't want to be ever condescending, because it's something that people are really learning themselves and teaching themselves. And And it's so great to, once you do support businesses, say like mine, or I, personally buy all my clothes, either they're vintage or from uh, handmade in the US, that it feels good to know that your products are going, or your dollars are going to these designers and their team of people, and you can really see them on Instagram or, you know, through their videos, which is such a great time to be able to have a business like this, because I think maybe 15 years ago, it definitely probably would not have survived. I think because people would say, "Oh, it's too expensive. That doesn't make sense. I can get this cheaper there or here." Um, but but the cost of, but at what cost?
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah. So, but yeah, exactly. So, it's really kind of evolved into definitely me. Also building up other women that I bought, like their clothes or shoes or accessories, jewelry. And it's such a great community that, there are so many talented people doing these things, making things, and practicing very minimal waste, that you just feel great about what you're buying, and you can buy less and buy better too.
Yeah, I love that. So, what advice do you have for brands or retailers who want to become more sustainable? I know you mentioned the documentary, like, kind of educating is probably the first step, but what other advice would you
Yeah.
have?
Yeah, definitely that documentary, if you're kind of like, I have no idea what slow fashion is, I don't know what you're talking about, that's definitely a great way to start. But, and I know that it could definitely be overwhelming, saying, how can I make an impact, or does it even count? I feel like a lot of people are putting so much pressure on themselves personally and also as a business. And, it's definitely baby steps. Your personal life, make sure you're recycling. And then even in business, we're trying to make those smaller steps of making sure we're not using any plastic, making sure even our tape, we're just using gummed paper, and kind of really telling anyone that we send our products to reuse the tissue paper, or make sure you go and recycle the cardboard box. And and really kind of maybe step back and, like, say, for other businesses, I think those places are a great way to start, to be a little more sustainable. And even with us at Neva Opet, we're practicing, or we're getting towards utilizing more of our scraps, and becoming, very low waste. I know no waste is it's very hard to do, because I feel like at some point there might be a little something that is thrown away. So very minimal waste in terms of utilizing all of our scraps and repurposing them into new products too.
That's great. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So at Women in Retail, we're all about women empowerment. You mentioned that where your office is right now
Hmm.
is all other women businesses are in there, right?
Uh-huh.
So do you have any female mentors or mentees that, are important to you?
Yeah, I when you sent me over, or these questions, I was like, oh, I was so excited about this one. Um, yeah, and again, it's such a great time to be a woman. But uh, but I've been very thankful in that, my mom, she's a single mom, she raised me herself. She is herself an entrepreneur, but in real estate. And I'm so thankful that I can go to her for other little things. Like when you start a business, it's like you kind of fall into that world of taxes and payroll and insurance, and it can definitely be very overwhelming when you already have so many other things you're doing, not just making things or practicing excellent customer service or answering emails. So having those people and like my mom or a good group of friends, having a network of people to kind of say, "Hey, what kind of payroll software do you use? How much do you pay in insurance?" is some of those little tiny things that we might overlook, but that kind of come to you in business that you really just have to teach yourself, or just have a group of great people surrounding you. And which is another reason me and my team, we've got a small team. It's just me and two other gals,
Hmm.
who are also actually makers themselves. And we've been talking recently that we would love to have more involvement with not only other businesses, but just more women that are kind of in the same boat, no matter their business. It doesn't necessarily have to be a creative, but so we're kind of actually in talks of emailing, getting a group of women together, maybe once a month at our studio, and just really having a theme or just an open discussion about things that we've been struggling with, whether it's marketing, referrals, networking, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like sometimes it can be when you are working alone, which is how I started out, it was very isolating. And, being in your own headspace for too long can kind of, you know, not make you evolve as quickly as you should, or as I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always great to have a network of people to be able to bounce ideas off of and go
Yeah,
to.
or even when especially those truthful friends that will say, "Hey, you need to stop doing this," or maybe have you thought of this? Because you don't want to also involve or surround yourself with a bunch of yes people too, because
That's so true.
again, yeah, because no one's perfect, and you can always evolve or just perfect any aspect of your business. And that's why I try not to have too much of an ego about it.
So, what's next for you and Neva Opet? And maybe also, where do you see sustainable fashion going in the future?
That's a great question. So like I touched on a little bit earlier, what we've recently been, since we're really trying to utilize most of our scraps, because we do, end up with scraps or those little tiny leather remnants. And so me and my team, we've been really prototyping housewares or plant hangers, tiny things maybe around the house or for your business, whether it's little keychains, getting more into being able to use those tiny scraps that we may produce every now and again, because we do also donate them to local jewelry designers or nonprofits or teachers. Uh, but sometimes we just produce, if they've got two boxes of scraps for us, then we've got to kind of rethink, our process, because there's only so much they can have. So kind of those things have been pushing us towards rethinking how like what kind of waste or we're producing, and just being more mindful of that. And as far as the slow fashion uh, realm, uh, I think, I'm really happy. I'm really proud. Even locally, a friend of mine who has a store, Coco and Misha, she is actually holding a slow fashion symposium this weekend, and really just kind of having people talk about their consumption or how to even build on a capsule wardrobe. And I'm just really excited about where it's going. And people are just, as far as consumers, they're just really excited to kind of not only just purchase from someone maybe they know or follow on Instagram, but we can, especially at Neva Opet, we can say you're going to have this bag for years, and we stand behind our process, we stand behind our leathers and our craftsmanship, and it'll last you for years. And that's why we say beat it up and wear it forever.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Women in Retail Talks. It was great to learn more about Neva Opet, but also about slow fashion and sustainability in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at wirlc.com/podcasts for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.
To hear from more inspiring women in retail like our guest today, attend our Women in Retail Leadership Circle On the Road event in New York on October 24th. Visit ontheroad.wirlc.com for more information, and we hope to see you there.